This is the Truth Network.
Hidden treasures of the Song of Songs, which is Solomon's. Oh, the star of wonder, star of light, star of royal beauty, bright when you begin to wonder. One of the joys of my walk with Christ and the way that I study the Bible is I love to wonder. And so when there's something I wonder about, I always look forward to what I'm going to learn. It's amazing. And God quickens me so many times with that. And so this morning I was excited already because I've wondered about the 8th and 9th verses of the Song of Solomon actually for years, realizing I didn't really understand the meaning of them. And so as we get into a few of the treasures that we find today, it's especially meaningful for me as I can feel another Christmas present coming, as I can see that, of course, the 8th verse in any chapter is the miracle verse from my perspective, because it's the letter Het, and it's where we see the union come together, and I think you're going to see that clearly in this particular verse. And then the 9th verse is the Hoof, and oh boy, is that going to be a treasure tomorrow. But today we get into this one, which, they've been talking about how important love is and all these things, and all of a sudden they completely change gears, the couple do, now that they're firmly established in their marriage, as Matthew Henry points out in his commentary. And interestingly, both Matthew Henry and Rashi have very similar, I'll call them Matt and Rosh, they have very similar views on this particular verse. So the 8th verse reads in English, "We have a little sister, and she hath no breasts. What shall we do for our sister in the day when she be spoken for?" And so, this is a peculiar thing. Like, where is this coming from? And what is this about? And as Matthew Henry points out, and I think very wisely, that, now that their love is established, they begin to, think about their family. Let's talk family here, and let's talk estate. And you'll see where that comes in a little bit later in later verses. But now we're going to begin a family here. And in this case, the idea of a sister has everything to do with the letter Het, right? Because of the union, and Rashi points that out as well, that we are united to this sister. And it's very much along the theme, the whole verse is very much along the whole theme of the Song of Solomon, because it always, that we're always coming back time and time again is, do not stir or awaken love till it's time. Timing is so important of what is being explained throughout this book. And here it says, she's not ready yet. It's not time for this little sister. She has not got breasts yet. And very beautifully, both Rashi and Matthew Henry, which again, another one of the ways that I study is I love to read people that I trust, that I have faith in what they say, that they've truly compared it to other passages in the Bible, as I know Rashi and Matthew Henry always do. And so they quickly went to Ezekiel chapter 16, and just to read the whole chapter 16 is spectacular, but when you look at verse 6, it speaks specifically, it's actually Ezekiel 16:7, which I'll read because it's so significant when it comes to this particular verse. He's talking about, when he saw Israel and gave them a law, etc. And he says, "I have caused thee to multiply as the bud of the field, and thou hast increased and waxen great, and thou art come to excellent ornaments. Thy breasts are fashioned, and thy hair is grown, whereas thou wast naked and bare. And now when I passed thee and looked upon thee, behold, that thy time was the time of thy love, and I spread my skirt over thee, and I covered thy nakedness." Again, you can see that what she's describing here is the breasts need to be fashioned. And in order for someone to be ready for love, which got me to thinking, wow, there's got to be a beautiful thing here in understanding the imagery by understanding this word fashion. How does God fashion breasts? And there was this unbelievable, fantastic, spectacular word, fashioned, which has to do with the next letter that we're going to talk about next verse, which is the letter Hoof, which has to do with like a crown and this desire. And the desire, as it would turn out, is through a vav, which means you're going to take your desire, hook it to heaven, so to speak. And then for what? For faith, right? And so as people's faith increase, And then they're ready for love, right? How are you going to marry somebody you don't have faith in? and that is how we end up marrying Christ, right? As we grow in our faith, it's fashioning our breasts. Isn't that beautiful? Isn't that spectacular? Because how are you going to feed children unless you have something to feed them? And if you don't believe in God, how in the world are you going to feed those children or disciples? And so it's interesting that as a young child, they begin as a child to be extremely selfish. But as they mature, right, they begin to think about other people and consider other things. But they have to, leave their father and mother at some point in time and begin to have faith in their husband, whatever that person would be. And as they grow in faith, they get to the point where they can literally be joined. And there, again, as their faith increases, right, then they're in a position to bear fruit. And once they have fruit, then they need to feed that fruit. And again, it comes from this unbelievable idea of faith, which is so connected to love. But you can know that's the reason why our faith is so critical to our union with Christ, right? That it really is literally fashioning our breasts, because as you truly, truly believe, as he grows your testimony, as he grows your faith, then he is fashioning your breasts, right? And so what's happening here is we've got a young sister. Now the question may be, that is obviously the star of wonder here, who is this young sister? Well, clearly both Rashi and Matthew Henry, and I would agree with them, say that this is the Gentiles, the people that later would become us. At the point in time that that Solomon is writing this, that is what you're thinking, that it's the Gentiles. But later on, right, as the church becomes the actual bride of Christ, then there's still a whole lot of Jewish people, a whole lot of people that are not in the faith that still have no breasts, because when you don't have faith, it can't be fashioned. Yeah, the time is not right. And so it's interesting. It's almost like this is the answer to the question, don't stir up wake and love until it's time. Well, when's it time? It's time when that person has faith. And so what can we do to build somebody's faith? Well, one of the most wonderful things we can do is share testimonies, right? And so how spectacular is this, that we can see throughout this miracle verse? To me, it's a miracle that we can see kind of how God is painting this picture for us to what marriage looks like, and what we can do for our little sisters, because every one of us is all out of Adam. I mean, Eve came out of Adam, and all of us came out of, Adam and Eve. And so there you go. We're one big, happy, brother and sister. And each of us, as the bride of Christ, is a sister. And some of our sisters clearly need faith, and so that they can fashion their breasts, and then they too can bear children, which we're going to get into in the next verse. But as you think about this, and you think about, wow, when was it that I had faith, in God, to the point that he knew it was time, right? This whole thing, that's awakened, that he was awakened, that he saw our nakedness. And again, read that whole chapter 16 in Ezekiel, and you can see the beauty of what he's talking about. And he saw us naked, and it aroused him under the apple tree. But the idea is that you were beautiful under that naked tree, because under that apple tree, because you had faith. And that faith, right, and that desire for faith is what is growing those beautiful breasts. It's a beautiful picture, an absolutely spectacular picture. And for me, I can remember I was so mad at God as I was reading the book of Job, and I was so mad because he had essentially taken away his kids and taken away everything he had just to show off to Satan, as was my crazy interpretation of the thing. And I was madder and madder and madder. And then I got to the end of the book of Job, and all of a sudden he said, "Okay, Robbie, if you're so smart, tell me, what exactly, how you can make the tide come in or make the sun set one time, since you're God and you know so much more than me." And so as I was reading that, all of a sudden I got to this point of humility, like, oh man, I had the same understanding my brother did. There is a God and I'm not him. There is a God and I'm not him. And if there is a God, and I need to know this God, and it changed the place where I was having faith in my family or faith in myself to faith in God, you see. And at that point in time, I got naked. however that worked, and I began the period of breast building, whatever that was. And oh my goodness, God saw that and he covered me with his skirt. And just as the kinsman redeemer does for Boaz, and we see so clearly is this picture in the Bible, what a Christmas present this is, to see how simple it is, that we would have this beautiful, because most fair among women attracts our little sisters, okay? And this is what also this book is teaching about what's the timing, how do we attract others for Christ. I mean, it's all about fruit, and I hope that through this we can all be so much fruitful, and I'm so grateful that you listen and take time with me. I again, I'm wishing you the best season ever and wonderful time just on the Star of Wonder.